Hello and welcome to the Large and Unnecessary First Player Token Podcast, episode 39.
Maximum Security Edition.
Hello! Yep, if you hear an alarm going off in the background, I don't know if somebody's trying to break into their own house or something, but there's a house alarm just going off constantly.
Either somebody's having to break into or somebody's doing a terrible job of robbing somebody.
This is a very safe country, gentlemen. It's wind. That's all it is.
Okay. Oh.
It's wind? Mm-hmm. Somebody's got wind and it's setting off a house alarm. Or a fire alarm, even.
One of those, yes. That is my hypothesis.
Okay, cool.
Don't fart on your burglar alarms. is the takeaway from today's episode.
It's the standard test, Euan.
Aim buttocks in the air.
Sound advice.
If my voice goes during this as well, it's because I had some exercise last night, so I'm still suffering for it at the moment. I'm just really not recovering from this.
Discovered a board game called Football.
This is well, I mean, it's played on a flat surface. It's a dexterity game, though. You know, you've got to actually use your body to play this game.
But no dice involved.
No dice involved.
It's a bit of a worker placement.
I did stop a guy at one point and just say, right, look, you've got the ball at your feet, so I'm going to roll this dice and see if I take it off you. But he wasn't up for it. He just punched me.
Right. It turned out he had a higher constitution.
Yeah, he had a higher strength score than me. Everybody had a higher constitution than me last night. Jesus Christ. First time in about 10 years that I've played football.
If it sounds like our voices are swaying, it's because we're sort of trying to avoid Chris's heaving ribcage.
So I think given that we're starting the episode with general advice, the advice is if you're playing board games, just don't bother with football. Is that what we're saying?
I wouldn't say that.
No?
No, I wouldn't say that.
So do video games
I'd love
as well,
to see a team of footballers playing Cosmic Encounter or something. I think that'd be a great laugh.
We could do a sort of reality TV swap sort of thing situation.
Yeah.
Bunch of board gamers playing five-a-side football
with board games.
Aye. And then a five-a-side football team playing Netrunner or something like that.
Oh yeah, that'd be good. I don't know which would be more entertaining, actually. A bunch of nerds trying to kick a ball around. In fact, probably that. Anyway, this isn't a board games episode. This is a video games episode.
Yes.
We're doing video games this week. So, let's introduce ourselves. We're not actually properly introduced ourselves. My name is Chris.
I'm Euan.
And I'm neither of those.
Thank you, Pawel.
Oh, he's back to his old
back to his old joke.
Aye.
Pawel with his joke.
Here comes Pawel with his joke.
Is it used up yet? I'll come up with something else.
You won't.
No, okay,
There's one joke for the rest of your life.
I'm sorry, my memory only lasts a couple of weeks, so I just have to repeat myself.
Okay, so let's get straight into the video games then. I think I'll start actually because I've finished Resident Evil 7. I finished Resident Evil Biohazard.
And we're very proud of you.
Yes, I've really enjoyed this actually. I'm not going to go into the story or anything, how it ends and stuff. It had the sort of final boss in the game. You kind of start to realise who this person's going to be, and the form that they're going to take when you fight them is actually the sort of more the more important aspect of this. But
because the members of this family all change forms, yeah?
Yeah, but you kind of move away from that house at a certain point in the game, and you do go into other places.
Okay.
But it's still the same family sort of coming after you at that point? Or is
well...
Again, you don't...
Not spoiling the story.
You don't really see them, but you do at one point. You are going to end up back at that house at some point. Put it that way.
You know that. Right?
I know that, but I don't want to ruin the story, so I'm not going to go into any details about anything. But if you go around and you actually take the time to actually read all the sort of documents you find lying about in all these various places and stuff, you start to kind of piece together what's happened, or not really what's happened, because it's a Resident Evil game. Who the fuck knows what's happened? There's no real sense to any of this, but you kind of get a feel for who this person that you're going to fight at the end is. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I can see what some people were saying, that the final battle was kind of a bit off. It wasn't as It wasn't as difficult as any of the other ones. It was kind of like, they had this big ending sort of thing, but it was fairly easy, to be honest.
Was the style of it sort of in keeping with the rest of the game, or was it something that felt a bit more classic Resident Evil?
It does become more classic Resident Evil, I think, as the game progresses. So, like I say, at the beginning of the game, it's more of that sort of stripped back horror where you're creeping about the house, you don't know what's round the next corner and all that kind of thing. But then you get to a point where there is more of that sort of classic Resident Evil stuff where you just find out a lot more about experimentations, and there's a lot more enemies to shoot and stuff like that as well as you go through. You do become more reliant on your guns the further through your game you get, and there are points in it where you're basically surrounded. But you play. I've played through the whole thing now. I have enjoyed it so much so that I'm actually considering getting some of the DLC for it. I never ever sign up for these season pass things or anything like that, because how would I know if I'm going to enjoy this game enough to pay enough for a season pass?
Season passes are just a big scam.
Yeah, they are a big scam.
Let's not beat about the bush here. We have certain views on this.
Time
program.
for a round.
Nerds will buy anything.
Basically, aye.
There it comes.
You want to rip someone off? Find a nerd with an interest.
But I will say, like, I am considering getting some of the DLC for it, because I felt like I wasn't done with the game yet.
Right.
And apparently some of this DLC's like pretty good.
Okay.
Like there are people saying that the one that is out already, because there's another one coming out. The one that's out already kind of fixes some of the things that people had been complaining about in the original game. I don't know what those complaints were,
right? But
because, like I say, I enjoyed the game as it was. I thought it was a pretty good game. The first Resident Evil game I've played that's just kept me so interested that I've basically completed the whole thing without feeling like without taking a break and going back to a week later or 2 weeks later. I've been playing it sort of consistently.
I think you need that kind of momentum to complete a game.
I do. I really do, because I'm really bad for just getting distracted with the next shiny thing that comes along and just being like, I'll start playing that now. I think, Pawel, you fall into that category as
well. A couple of games I complete in my life in one sitting.
Games companies rub their hands together when they see people like me and you.
Oh yeah.
You'll buy their crap.
I'm guilty, absolutely.
So the DLC's mainly sort of augmenting the main single player story. Like, there's no.
See, I'm not entirely sure. I'm not entirely sure,
right.
But I've not really looked into it. Every time I load the game up now, it keeps saying, "Do you want this DLC? You buy it now." And I'm just like, "Look, I'll get it later." Okay.
That's interesting. You're even considering another playthrough then, if you would go for.
I'm thinking about another playthrough for the sole reason that there are two endings in this game.
Okay.
The so-called good ending and the so-called bad ending.
Right.
I got the good ending, but as I was saying to you guys earlier, it does come down to a straight choice that you make at some point in the game. So there's no secrets or anything to try and get a different ending or anything like that. It's a straight up choice that you're given. And if you choose one direction, you get the good ending. You choose another direction, you get the bad ending. So I've got the good ending. And it's fairly obvious how you get the good ending, to be honest, and which one's going to be the bad ending. But yeah, so I am considering playing through it again, or even just going back to an old save and playing through from that point to make the other decision, basically, and then play through the rest of the game there, just to see what the bad ending's like, because I think that could be fun.
Could be a laugh.
But there is, as we were saying, there is a tie-in to the older games. I don't know, should I say? How vague should I be about this?
It should be vague. Let's not spoil
So,
it.
okay, right. So I'll not actually say, but there is a tie-in to the older games, and it's something that Pawel was constantly asking me about in the last time I talked about this. So if you listen to that episode, you probably now know what I'm talking about, but that's all I'll say about it. Pawel kept saying, "Oh, is this thing in it? Is this thing in it?" I'm like, yeah, I don't know yet, but okay, it makes an appearance.
Thank you.
Is all I'll say about that.
My curiosity has been sated.
Well, I think most people who played it probably, because I know a few people who played it, and it's something they've all brought up.
Yeah,
it's an odd thing, but
aye,
there you go.
I don't think because I have heard other people complaining about that thing in particular, but I'm just like, look, I don't care.
It seems to me though that it is so, the way that it's been done seems to be setting up for possibly future installments. Like I don't see why you would just drop things in, but again, we're discussing something.
I think one of the DLC, by the looks of it, the one that isn't out yet, I think that might develop this thing a bit further.
All right.
Just judging by the picture that I saw.
Okay.
Because it's the same
Right.
The sort of image is the thing that we were talking about. This is as vague as we're getting.
I know this is weird. Like,
I can't even use nouns anymore.
No proper nouns.
I think it went well. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Resident Evil 7, Resident Evil Biohazard, whatever you want to call it, I really fucking enjoyed it.
Chris done completed it.
Excellent VR game. In fact, I just can't. Like I said before, I can't imagine playing it without the VR. I don't think I'll bother. I've loved this.
Good stuff.
So, Pawel,
Hello.
you want to talk about For Honor?
I do.
Your Honor.
My honour, your honour. Yes.
Now, you've talked about this before, haven't you? When you did the closed beta.
Well, I've done 2 closed betas or betas, depending on who you are. And yeah, you'd think that this is the only option, but it's not. It's bothering me. Every single time I say beta, I'm being corrected. Every time I say beta, I'm being corrected.
What's the Polish?
When I say demo or demo, neither is correct.
How do the Polish say the Greek word?
The Polish would say beta because in Polish, every syllable is always pronounced the same. Whereas in this strange language...
I do admire that about the Polish language, by the way. That basically, if you can learn the pronunciation, you can say any word.
Yeah. Anyway, so now that we're on it, I actually have a bone to pick with For Honor because it's been released in this lovely country with a bloody mistake in the word honor because it should be spelled with a U.
Yes,
I did see that.
Correct.
It's annoying.
I was worrying about it. You'd think just do a region specific title.
Exactly.
So that people can shout For Honor.
Yes. So I wish I had more to say about For Honor just now, but I've only played a little bit of it. First and second beta were essentially about introducing you to the game's multiplayer modes and all the classes you'll get to play. So I've tried all that, and now that I have the full release, I've also started taking a shot at the single-player campaign, which is fairly straightforward, I think, and judging by how it starts, I think it's safe to say that the whole campaign will be about telling a story that I suppose shaped this particular setting through the eyes of various characters who, again, are only there to actually introduce you to the classes. Okay. So you play as the generic warden type of knight, which is your basic versatile, simple to play knight class, and then once you're done with a couple chapters of that, then you start jumping through another knight classes, and I suppose once you've done all 4 knight classes, you'll then go to a Viking campaign or a samurai campaign, and this is what it's going to be. That's what I'm guessing. I'm just going through it now.
So far, there's no single player.
No, this is what I'm... The campaign has got some narration, some narrative, some... I'm not going to say a story because there's really not that much to it. It's essentially, this is a world all about war, and
Sorry, have you played the multiplayer at all, other than in the beta? Did you play in the beta? Wait, sorry, I'm a bit confused here. You could only play the multiplayer in the beta, couldn't you?
Yes.
There was no single player in the beta.
There was no single...
Yeah,
well, there was single player content because you can play against bots, but there was no single player campaign as such. Yeah. So I should say yes, I've played multiplayer during the beta, but because I only got the game like 2 days ago, I only had the time to try single player at the moment, and because Jennifer Hale is doing the female voice for whichever first character you play as, that's me sorted. I don't.
Did you get a bit soppy there? Were you mildly in love? Was that what I saw in your eyes there?
Jennifer Hale is femshep in Mass Effect. This is all that matters.
Right.
As essentially, I could end my review here and just say, yeah, Jennifer Hale is in it. Go for it.
Are you doing a review of Jennifer Hale? Is this what this has turned into?
No need to review that. I mean, that's pretty much just a done deal. Right.
Another spin-off podcast, possibly.
I'll just say I played a bit of the For Honor open beta, the last one, which was just last weekend, just before they released it. Did you have a quick go at this?
I had a couple of quick goes on it. Yeah, just that. I think I ended up because I was having difficulty getting onto the thing, was just playing against the AI. But you end up playing with a team of folk randomly picked from online anyway. Because it was like 4 against 4. I don't know
Which
if
is,
that's pretty
I think,
standard.
the Dominion,
it was,
something.
or Deathmatch.
I think it was Deathmatch.
Because there's a bunch of different multiplayer modes.
There's a number of modes, yes, and most of them are essentially about duels in various conditions. And this whole game, no matter what it's going to try to make of itself, whether, as I said, there is a story supposedly behind it and some sort of plot line, fairly basic, but whatsoever. But essentially, this game is all about the combat system, the melee mechanics. How do you guys find it?
It's interesting. I mean, I quite enjoyed it. It's different. It's something I've not seen. I think other games may have attempted this in the past.
Yeah, there's been a few things like Chivalry and War of the Roses and things like this.
But I think this is fairly easy to use but hard to master.
Oh yeah,
is the way that I would
quite
describe
deep
it.
as well.
It
You can
looked
do
a
a
lot
lot
more
of stuff with it.
Oh yeah, well, that's like just playing it a couple of days. It looked a lot simpler than I was expecting it to look, because you're not worrying too much about observing what your character models actually do. It's more just
you're just looking at the ladders.
There's three stances.
Yeah, the three stances. So if you're attacking on the
You'd
left,
think there's only three, but there's more.
yeah, well, there's three basic stances. Let's say. So if you're attacking on the left, but you're guarding on that side as well, then that person's not really going to hit you as long as you're just standing there, you're not trying to do anything. Because if you try and attack, then one of you is going to hit the other.
Unless you do a heavy attack just at the moment of that attack, which is where you parry. So it's all very. I mean, there's so many ways.
But this is what you're saying. This is a game of duels rather than anything else. I mean, you do get points where other people you might end up facing off against three guys at once, but it is
which
a game.
Is when you just get obliterated. So it's actually a game of tactics as well, because it's if you're 1 against 2 or 3, then you're done for.
Yeah, and that's true. But it's when you're going just 1-on-1 against somebody, it becomes like a game of chess.
Oh god, yeah.
It's just like trying to match your stance with the other person if you're trying to block and stuff like that.
Knowing properly
and then
classes as
knowing
well.
the right moment to switch. Yeah, knowing your class's attacks and stuff like that. I play as the Vikings all the time.
The original beta had just the simple classes which were fairly predictable, but with the addition of the super heavy and all those assassin types, it actually is quite diverse now, and you really have to learn them well, because you'll constantly get surprised by what they can do, which is what the campaign is about. But it introduces the classes in a thematically correct way, I suppose. So well done that. But in the end, as soon as I'm done with the single player, this is going to be just a multiplayer grind, because this game is all about unlocking various adornments for your armor, different kinds of weapons, and just mastering the class. It's a strange hybrid, this game, because it's really a fighting game. It's your Street Fighter, really, where you're learning all the combos and all the other characters you fight against.
Well, it's definitely it's a steeper learning curve than anything I've played for a long time.
Well, I would agree with that.
Probably fighting games, that's a comparable thing, because it's really about who you're playing against for the most part. And if you master it, then
if you go in and just start button hacking against somebody that knows what they're doing, you're done for. Like you will not survive. It's like you say, if you're playing Street Fighter against somebody that knows what they're doing and you're just smacking the buttons, you're fucked.
So what I found though when I was having a go at it was just that I could kind of it's like getting the basics of how the stances work and everything. I could kind of see where I was obviously going wrong, which I was going to do at the start. What I found was when I won, I couldn't work out what it was that I'd done right.
Yeah, that game does that to you. You're just like, right, wait, I just won that fight. How did I do that?
Because it's quite fast paced. Like I was expecting.
Because they are all heavy weapons, and I think it's going to take a while.
In my head, when you talked about it before and you were playing the closed beta, I was not an exact, because I think we were talking a lot about the Souls series at the time as well, and I was certainly aesthetically, I was thinking of something a bit more closer to that, sort of grittier atmosphere and a sort of maybe slower paced in terms of how people move.
Or
and
it can be
like
quite
that.
aggressive.
But it's quite in your face. This game, it's a lot more colourful than I was expecting. Right, for some reason reminds me of Shadow of the Colossus, Shadows of the Colosseum.
Oh.
Which is a random PlayStation 2 game that possibly only I have played.
Oh, I think that rings a bell.
Where you were basically fighting in a Colosseum on the one hand, and then on the other hand you were doing these really annoying and badly designed stealth bits.
Ah, right.
Alright then, yes.
Yeah. I don't know why I brought that up.
I'm just gonna say one thing now that you've mentioned button bashing, because obviously this game is far away from it until you start plowing through regular infantry. Because this game has got various modes, single player campaign is one of them, and some of the modes also have it. You don't only fight against actual proper opponents, which are a head taller than whatever regular soldier. You also get these hordes of nameless cannon fodder that
think Dynasty Warriors.
Yeah. And they present no threat apart from the fact that they may stab you from time to time, which pushes you out of balance, takes a tiny fraction out of your health. But obviously, if you're actually in duel with somebody properly dangerous, then it can be fatal to you.
Right.
But they had to add them because all these fights, all these duels are taking place usually during various sieges and other battles. So you need some proper background for it. But where I'm going to is you don't lock onto small soldiers. There is, say, 20, 30 of tiny soldiers. You don't lock on them. You just have to plow through them.
Yeah, you just start swinging.
Exactly. And when you play single player campaign, or when you play one of those modes where these soldiers are quite populous all around you, it's, at first at least, maybe I'll get used to it, but at the moment I find it a little bit difficult to switch between proper duels and essentially button mashing to kill all those little dudes. And it's even stranger during the campaign, where you don't have proper duels until you probably get your boss of the level at the end. So you get, duels as in enemies you can lock onto, where all the blocking mechanics work, but they still have a fraction of your health. Right. So there's various, I'm going to say tiers. Let's say tiers. Tiers. Thank you. Of opponents you get to meet and face off, and you have to constantly remind yourself whether this is a one-hit opponent, whether this is somebody you should actually be blocking against, and things like this.
All right, cool.
That's probably a good thing as well. It seems like the kind of game that wants you to be thinking about how, not just blindly hacking.
Yeah.
Let's face it, Pawel, right? You've bought this game to play the single-player campaign, essentially, but you're in the minority there.
Yes, but to my defense, I do like co-op multiplayers. And Mass Effect, which is co-op multiplayer and essentially just a horde mode where you fight with your buddies against, say, whatever number of waves of enemies. And I played that for over a year, I think. So you can do the same thing here, I think. Well, you can play co-op against bots, which is what I quite enjoy.
I'm just saying that because a lot of the people that I've heard talking about this game, they're only going on about the multiplayer. They're not. Like, I wasn't even aware that there was a single-player mode in this until you mentioned it.
I was quite surprised that they included it. I'm happy
so am I, actually.
That they have. Yeah.
But it's still making me think of Dynasty Warriors. It's just like, that's what it makes me think of. Just not as hack and slashy. More thinky.
I fully agree. Dynasty Warriors is hordes of enemies and deals with whatever generals. But in here, you still kill one enemy at a time, no matter how hard you swing. Sometimes you might hit two of those mindless tiny bots. And obviously your deals with generals are the meat of the game. So it's an unfair comparison, because I actually think that For Honor is much closer to your proper fighting games, which are usually obviously two-dimensional. But other than that, this game is all about knowing your enemy, knowing your own class, knowing all the combos and things like this.
Okay. Anything else to add?
Give me a couple of weeks and I'll know more.
Excellent. How long is the single-player campaign, do you know?
I've done 4 chapters in one sitting, and there's 3 campaigns, I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Given that the first campaign, the night campaign I'm going through, hasn't introduced all the classes yet, I'm going to say give it a couple nights.
Okay. But the multiplayer mode has like different things. So there's a whole thing going on with the multiplayer mode where there's just a big map basically, and you're fighting over zones and stuff like that. And then it actually has an effect on the game and stuff like that about where the maps that you'll fight on and stuff like that, depending on the zones. And then at the end of a certain period of real time, then the battles get concluded, basically, and then one faction will take over a zone and stuff, and then you start again, start fighting over these things. So it's like an actual like multiplayer campaign thing that's going on the whole time.
And admittedly, at the moment, I don't know anything more than what you've just said about it. I've not actually experienced it.
Let's say I only played the open beta, and I thought that was quite an interesting thing they did with that.
It sounds cool, and I'm eager to see how it actually is going to work. Okay,
so that's For Honor, which is by Ubisoft, and was released this week. It was on February the 14th, so a nice romantic kicking the shit out of each other game for Valentine's Day.
Oh, yeah.
Spend Valentine's Day as a Viking in a computer game.
I think I did, actually. Right. Let's move on. So, Euan, you're still playing Final Fantasy 15?
Battering through it as best I can. That's the thing. It's the size of the game is starting to sort of like open out before, because I was in the early stages of it. I was a wee bit worried about the potential restrictiveness of the format. I mean, they've made it as non-linear as they possibly can. Considering that was sort of the problem with Final Fantasy games over the last few ones. Sort of, I think 10 possibly just by necessity of moving to like a 3D sort of like they probably like, wait, we can't do a big world map and all this sort of stuff. 12, I'm not really sure why. But there was 13. It was the big sort of the big problem was it was just like going through a series of corridors, and now they've gone completely the other way with this, where it's so open world you can just go wherever you like. It's starting to like. It's actually kind of enthused me a bit, and because I'm now starting to go to new areas and things like that, and I'm venturing out a bit more. Like the things that they've incorporated, like we were talking about survival elements the other day, and there's things like I've started to work out how to get about and do little like side quests and things like that in an efficient way. Because one of the things that I think a lot of people encounter in this, and I think possibly could be a complaint people might have, is that there can be a lot of slogging in this, because the car can take time to get places, but like, and it does sort of, it kind of necessitates you thinking ahead to some extent, knowing where there's like rest stops where you can refuel your car. Because I've actually had it now where my car's run out of petrol, and just as far as I possibly could be away from a garage, and then having to. I mean,
was that deliberate?
Not deliberate, no. No.
Sounds like the kind of thing that you would do.
It's like, let's see
how far I can go.
Let's see how far I can push this car.
That car flies though, doesn't it?
You may have just given something away I've not reached.
Oh, sorry. I do believe that this car is supposed to fly.
Master of giving things away.
You've looked up something online about Final Fantasy 15 that could have come from any point in the game, and you've just dropped that casually in the conversation.
I'm so sorry. I mean, it's on every single screenshot.
Nah, I don't look at screenshots for this game.
I feel so guilty now.
To be honest, it seems like the likely thing that... Because you always end up with an airship in these games, and it seems like the likely thing that is probably going to be the car, considering the way things are going with it. Pawel, you've ruined the game. But anyway, the main things I kind of want to highlight is... and I suppose in some way I'm kind of almost doing a service for people playing the game who are like me and just fucking idiots when it comes to these things. The only way to make money early on in the game is basically doing hunts, which is something I'd only really encountered, because I was like, I hadn't done hunts for quite a long time, because I mean, like, I want to do main story stuff, I want to do these side quests. Realised that I've basically been going about for the most part of the game with about 100 gil in my pocket, and that's it, and just getting most of my potions. And you need a lot of potions in this game compared to any other Final Fantasy game. You're constantly just hoovering potions, high potions. You're either using them in combat constantly, or you're putting them into magic, which is the other thing I've learnt a bit more about, how the magic works in this, and this is another thing that I absolutely love about this game. It sticks to classic things. You've got 3 elements: fire, ice and lightning, which I think I talked about previously. But you basically, essentially, you have these magic flasks in your inventory, and you get more of them as you go on. So at the moment I think I can store about 8 spells, and that is your maximum. The time that you can carry, like, you sort of increase that as you go. In each flask, you might have like multiple uses of a single spell, usually 3. If you increase like the potency of the spell through the more of that elemental power you put into it, and however like much you've sort of leveled up your ability, or you can also increase the potency by putting extra of a particular like potion into it. So I've basically been making all of my offensive spells also heal me, just sticking in a ton of high potions into it as well. And the thing is, there's no
interesting.
limit to your inventory, so you can just crank in a load of them. And what I hadn't realised was like, so certain things like ethers, they give
your magic.
Now MP in this game, I don't think I mentioned this when I was talking about magic points do exist in this game, but only for your main character Noctis.
Right.
And it's got nothing to do with his magic. It's for his kind of warping about the place and your dodging, which is you sort of phase out of things like that, and that consumes magic. So once you reach 0 at that, all it does is he can't do any of that stuff, and he's a bit slow, basically, and useless in combat.
Sounds almost like a stamina meter.
Aye, basically, but they've kept it MP because
it's Final Fantasy
essentially. So yeah, you like something like an ether you can put into your magic spell, and its basic ability is dual casting. So you'll double cast any spell you'll do.
Oh, right.
But if you put in, what I found is if you put in more ethers, so it's like one will do the dual cast at a certain level, like a high ether will have a higher level of that dual cast. You start putting more items in, it'll actually increase to like a tricast or quadcast or quintcast is the highest I've seen. You can get an automatic quintcast with like an amazing item, like a mega potion or something like that. But if you just keep cranking in the cheaper ones, if you've got them, then you can make some insane magic. And it's like I was wondering why there's quite a bit of a cooldown on using magic, and it's because it's insanely powerful.
Okay.
I've gotten to this thing of just
almost like the designers have went, that needs a cooldown.
Yeah, that needs something. Because one of my favourite things is every time there's a constant sort of stream of, as you'll be going about every so often, Imperial troops, like a troop carrier will fly overhead and stop, and you can kind of go,
random
I can't be bothered with that.
Okay.
I'm just going to keep going, and you'll be out of their range. But sometimes you go, I think I'm gonna mess with the Empire, and you turn round and you just lob a fire dagger or whatever at it, and just see all the bars go down instantly to nothing. It's quite satisfying. But yeah, basically that, and the other thing, I've been doing a lot more of the chocobos.
Alright.
Or chocobos. I can't remember what the right pronunciation is.
I think it's chocobos, but
I don't know, because
I'd always called them chocobos from like a young age.
Chocobos, I think, is the right pronunciation, but there's a friend of mine, a mutual friend of ours, started calling them chocobos.
But I've heard other people
for
call
a
them
laugh.
chocobos.
You guys know that Japanese actually don't put accents anywhere.
Well, yeah, because they, like Poland, have a proper phonetic alphabet, like which puts most Romance languages to shame.
Unlike English, the most bastardised language that's ever existed. We'll just steal these words from that country.
Well, in fact, if it wasn't, if you were going with Japanese, it would be chocobo.
Chocobo.
So yeah, that's right.
Chocobo.
Yeah.
Aye.
So chocobo is not right then.
But that's what I called it when I was like 12 years old, because that's how I read it.
Because
also,
chocolate.
And chocolate.
Yeah, chocolate. Aye.
The Chocobot Fun Hour.
Thoughts on salmons?
Salmons.
Yeah.
I've done
Salmons.
Well, the thing is, there is fishing in this game. Sorry, because you were asking me about the summons, and that has started to come into play. Basically, yeah, I got the first one, and then you very quickly in the main story you go off and find your second one. And from what I can tell, there's 6, because you have it's worked into the lore of the game. You have the hexatheon.
Okay.
Instead of the pantheon.
Yeah.
It's there's 6 of them. So.
But is this something that you can slob? Or?
Essentially, yeah, it's not something you can just use in combat. I've used one for the first time in the game, and it was at the end of a sort of story mission that I was doing, and it seems like that was a deliberate thing that they put that in there, because I seem to be getting messed up by although I was like, I can take this, but for some reason my health just keeps getting, I just keep getting bombarded, and then it comes up hold L2 to summon Rama, is the one in that, is lightning god.
Lightning guy.
Aye. And he just comes and obliterates everything, and essentially that ends the mission, because he just kills this base that you're infiltrating. So I don't know whether it's going to be something that will come up at certain points in the game, or whether it'll be a random chance that it'll happen during battles. That's, I think, the impression I've been given, that it's essentially, it's like if you're doing badly in some battles, occasionally luck will come up and you'll just hold L2 to win, essentially, it was described as to me. So yeah, but they're cool, because you get
Obviously, they're very impressive.
Because they're the gods are massive, and they come in and they just they wreck shit up. I made some comparisons with Final Fantasy 12 when we were talking about this before, and a big problem I found with that was, and I went through all this rigmarole of getting all the summons in that because it was like I want all the summons, and there were a lot of summons in Final Fantasy 12, but it was so tangential to the game that it makes me I never used them in combat ever. Well, maybe once or twice, but the way that they worked is, if you played Final Fantasy 12, they tried to do what they're doing now, where you were on the world map and all the enemies you saw, you fought. So when you summoned, that's the rest of the party appeared, and the person summoned them. You would just have the person summoning them and the summon.
So same like in Final Fantasy X.
Yeah, actually,
which is where summons are actually very important.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I think they were better used in 10 than they were in 12, and I think what they've kind of done with this is let's not throw them in as a just something to be there because it has to be, but it's expected to be there. Let's work it in some way into the game. There's enough stuff in the combat for you to put. There's so many options. I'm starting to realise now, and you can call in. As you level up your chocobo, it has moves it pulls in. You can actually call in the chocobo to do offensive moves and things during the combat and stuff like that. At this point, there's no need to be adding in summons really.
Gotcha.
So what they are for the game, I think, works.
All right.
So, but yeah, that's all I wanted to.
You're still ploughing through it though.
Yeah. Really enjoying it. I think I'm still quite early on in the story. I'm trying to
It sounds almost like you think you're getting somewhere and then realise just how big this game actually is.
But then that's class. Again, that for me is what Final Fantasy should be.
Aye.
I think because the whole 7, 8 and 9, you started, by the time you got to 9, there were certain expectations, and that made certain things predictable. And the way that they've kind of tried to change it up, they've messed it up over the last few games, I won't deny. This one, they seem to have kind of found their formula. So, I'm happy so far.
Cool.
Lovely.
Right, so that's Final Fantasy 15. Well, let's get back to Pawel then.
Yes, let's get back to me.
Playing some point and click happiness.
Absolutely. This is going to be a long story now, you see.
Oh, you don't have time for a long story.
Oh, come on. No.
Look, we've got a new thing, right? We keep the episodes to about an hour.
Yes, but this particular game is part of my biography, you see? So I have to tell you the whole story.
Is this in your CV?
No. This is about me moving to this country and getting to know it. And this is about RPGs, and there's so much backstory to it. I could probably just say that...
Euan, go and bring him a pipe and some slippers.
I think...
Well, I'll put the fire on.
I'm going to say, back in the time when you kiddies...
A story for the kids.
Yes, probably just played with sticks. I was playing point-and-click adventures by Sierra. And there were a lot of those, and most of them were absolutely brilliant.
Point and clicks were your gang huts, weren't they?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Girls.
Doing the gangy.
Right, no, but I'll try to keep it short. Gabriel Knight Beast Within, which is actually a sequel to Gabriel Knight Sins of the Fathers, is just a game I have a particular spot for, mostly because this is the first English game I bought, and I actually bought it when I visited this country 20 years ago, and I thought, let's move in here, and this is to me at least one of the I'm gonna say top points in the evolution of point-and-click adventures, because at some point technology allowed for actors to actually play in video games. A couple of games were made, some of them fairly disturbing, like Phantasmagoria and the like, and there was Gabriel Knight Beast Within. If you're familiar with point-and-click format, that's essentially a fairly linear adventure where you're given a scene with clickable objects on it, and as you interact with those objects, collect some of them, mix some of them together, and you progress your story. So a fairly basic and early, I suppose, concept for video gaming. But I just think that Gabriel Knight Beast Within as such made it so well simply because you've got regular proper actors playing the characters, you've got amazing music score to the point that Actually, somebody composed a short opera for this game alone. The game takes place in 20th century. You're playing this descendant of an ancient line of monster hunters called the Schattenjägers. So you play a Cajun novel writer called Gabriel Knight, or alternatively his...
Sounds great already.
His sidekick, Grace Nakamura, who's pretty much just his secretary. And you just,
A Cajun novelist with a Japanese secretary.
well, that's America for you.
I take it he lives in the bayou and never actually leaves.
When the game starts, he lives in a German fairy tale castle made by Ludwig von, I can't remember whom, the Mad King Ludwig II.
Who played his game.
Yep. Whereas Grace looks after his bookstore back in New Orleans, but then joins him. In any case, it's a supernatural mystery with werewolves. That's what it is, and an absolute magical game. It plays like a film, and a good film as well. Where you're into mysteries with werewolves, but it's work of art, and you should bloody play it.
It sounds delightful.
It's been released for Windows 95 a fairly long time ago, but it has been re-released on Steam fairly recently, so it now works on the modern operating systems.
You did say it was a Sierra thing. Is this part of the... Because remember I talked about a few episodes back, Arcanum, that was part of a bundle of old, like a re-release of old Sierra.
I do think that this was part of the bundle, yes.
So if you were interested in that, then perhaps that's still available.
I've already got all of them.
Aye, well, yeah.
So this is actually Gabriel Knight 2.
Yes, I'm quite keen to talk about Gabriel Knight Sins of the Fathers as well, and its remaster, which has been released fairly recently, and it's cool as well, but maybe next time, because time.
I mean, we always say that, like, it's part of your sort of description of this podcast that I wrote, which was that we talk about games old and new. So just to get an impression, in 1996, Computer Gaming World magazine named this their Game of the Year.
Nice.
So hey, we do talk about old games.
Aye.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Jane Jensen, who made the character and pretty much produced this game as a novelist. So this game has got, apart from its production values, which to me work quite well even nowadays. I mean, it's actors moving around, yeah? You can see that. You don't have any 3D avatars in this game, and every cutscene is pretty much just a bit of a movie. But in terms of narration, in terms of the story, it reads like I'm going to say, because this genre actually exists nowadays, but 20 years ago, Jane Jensen was already in it, but Twilight was not around. This is a young adult thing, or dark, what's it called? Dark urban fantasy, or, things like that.
Something like that.
This is pretty much...
It's not teenage or young adult fiction.
That's pretty much that.
That's been around for a while.
It's been around for a while. It's just been, more, I'm going to say, active and, yeah.
I've got a question about the actual gameplay of this.
Shoot.
All right, so these Sierra point-and-click games, I mean, when I was a kid, I was a big fan of these things. Like, I love these things.
Yeah.
We've talked about them before. The ones that stick out in my mind were one of the Indiana Jones ones.
Oh, yeah.
And The Dig, which I could never complete. Now, one of the reasons for me never completing The Dig... we also had Full Throttle as well.
Okay.
But The Dig, it suffered from that thing that point-and-click adventures have, which is that generally you're just wandering about, clicking on things, picking stuff up, trying to combine them. And a lot of that was just, does this combine with that? Does this combine with that? Does this combine with that? Is that in this game, or is it a bit more obvious about what you do? Because I remember one of the Indiana Jones games being really sort of kind of more obvious about what you should combine with each other, and that's why I quite enjoyed that one. It's the same with Full Throttle. But The Dig just drove me insane because that was just a case of you're just randomly clicking on things, and then you spend when you're like a 9-year-old kid or 10-year-old kid or whatever, you lose patience with that very quickly.
And before the time of internet, when you couldn't really look up online,
you had to phone a 50p a minute phone line to get tips.
You know what? Yes. Okay.
Try to choose between that or ringing up the
and then your dad's like, what the fuck is this on the phone bill?
No, I mean, This one's not that bad when it comes to it. Point and click games in general are quite notorious for things like this, and some of them will actually take pride in it. Especially the less serious ones will actually have you just combine random things and have a proper laugh once you realise what you can do with these items.
The Rick and Morty one that they put out recently as a kind of harken back to these games had a lot of that stuff in it, but once you kind of got into the logic of where they were going with something, and they were obviously taking the mick out of that style, it was like, alright, this alien once cooked a bug. I need to throw it. There's no cooker. I'll throw it into this hot lamp.
Yeah, and sometimes you'll have games, point-and-click games, that are designed especially to challenge you with this particular gameplay mechanics, but are still done really well. A point-and-click that I've played some time ago, which is an absolute gem, is called I can't remember, so no worries there. I might just mention it later.
Cheers, guy.
But Gabriel Knight, especially Beast Within, really not too bad when it comes to this. It's fairly, probably because there's actors in it and the storyline is reads like a novella. The choices you make and the ways you resolve, your obstacles are quite logical, I'm gonna say.
All right, cool. So that is. Sorry, what was it?
The Beast Within, a Gabriel Knight mystery.
Gabriel Knight mystery. That's what it was. And that's by Sierra Online. Back in the days when online just meant having a computer. It had nothing to do with the internet.
Pretty much. That's very true, yes. And you know what? I never realised that. You're right.
Yeah, the definition of online has changed since the 90s. If you were online in the 90s, it just meant you had a computer that took up half your living room.
Machinarium.
People went around saying things like CD-ROM.
Yeah.
Machinarium is the game I meant.
Machinarium.
Fantastic game, which actually challenges your, I'm going to say, your sense of what to do with what in order to get where you want to get. Some puzzles are absolutely insane, but the game is very stylish and it's just pure joy. Honestly, play it. It's on Steam. It's small. It's brilliant.
Okay, cool. Right, so we're going to finish this up with a game that I have been streaming on Twitch. I've done the first. This is a 5-chapter game. I actually meant to look into this to see if this was released in chapters, because I think I just bought the full thing. I think it's possible that this was released in chapters originally, but don't quote me on that. Now, this is Orwell. So I've done the first 4 chapters, like I say, so I've still got the last chapter to play. Now, Orwell, Orwell brings up a certain thing in your head. When you say Orwell, George Orwell. Brings up the idea like 1984, Animal Farm, all that kind of thing.
Alternative facts.
So this is a simulation game. So it's a story-driven simulation game where you're basically a state operative for a fictional country called The Nation. Okay. Now, the game begins with a bomb going off in a place that's obviously called Freedom Plaza. So just this big squares, a fountain and stuff. Bomb goes off. And you are playing, like I say, as a state operative, so you are part of the Orwell Project. Okay, so the Orwell Project is basically just like a sort of sophisticated computer system, which is basically like, now, there's a lot of games around these days that are kind of like drawing parallels with certain political things that are going on in the world right now. So this is making me think of like stuff like the Snoopers Charter. So basically, you are part of a surveillance thing, so you're conducting surveillance, which basically gives you unlimited access to people's emails, phone calls, the in-game equivalent of a Facebook page, and eventually you can get into their bank accounts, all sorts of things, just to like see what people have been doing. Okay. So it's kind of sinister, and it's kind of like it's presented to you by like the only contact that you really have in the game, and it's not like there's no speech or anything in the game or anything. It's just like text on the screen. Is a guy called Symes who works for the government, and he's the only person that actually talks to you. But it's a one-way system; you can't talk back to him. So he's just basically saying to you, "Okay, here's what's happening." And what you're doing is you've got a sort of interface. It's supposed to be almost like a computer, and it's mildly futuristic, but it feels like it's supposed to be like a parallel current sort of time, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
But it's almost like it's slightly sort of futuristic thing. It made me think almost like what was that bloody hacking game?
Watch Dogs.
No, a few years ago, I can't remember what it's called. Maybe it'll come to me. But basically, you've got this thing in front of you, and then you've got like the Orwell bit on the left, and then you've got like your sort of internet browser and stuff like that on the right. And what you're doing is you get the CCTV footage and pictures from it of this bomb going off, and then there's a woman there, and you're okay. So the first thing you do is let's identify this woman. So you start going like you upload this picture to Orwell, and then Orwell cross-references it and all this sort of thing, and then it just comes back with, okay, this is this person. Right. And then you go into that person, you start digging into their private life. Okay, you find out what they've been doing, where they were that day, why they were there, and anything that they're linked to. And you start to uncover this group of people called Thought, who are totally against like government surveillance and all that sort of thing, and it's possible that they might have turned terrorist. So you start digging further into Thought, and so you find out who this woman is linked with, and like, you know, you start to dig into those other people as well, and then you find like I say, you start getting into their bank accounts, and you're like, okay, why did that guy get paid 3,000 credits? You know, where did he get that from? Why? And then you start digging into that, and it's just like you just go further and further. And the thing about this game, all right, is that you just get so caught up in it that you don't you start to forget how sinister the thing that you're doing is.
I was going to comment
because the gamer in you just comes through. You're like, I'm going to uncover this mystery, right? This mystery. But then, of course, I mean, like I say, because they're drawing sort of political parallels here. You start to get things wrong.
You might just step on a few liberties, but
because one of the things that this game does to you is that it says to you, like, when there's something relevant comes up in somebody's like website or something like that, it'll highlight it in blue, and that's something you can upload to Orwell. But things that are highlighted in yellow are things that are possibly conflicting with other things. Now, what they're basically trying to say here is that Orwell is not clever enough to basically decide which of these things is true. You have to make that decision, basically. And if you upload something to Orwell, you can't take it back again. You can't take it back out.
So you make your own truth.
Decision. Yeah, so there are points in this game where you have to make a decision about whether... And some of it's really straightforward. Some of it's just like somebody's been signed off work for a week. All right, but then you've got another thing that says that they did some part-time work for somebody that week. Okay, and that's just like, all right, that's fairly obvious. She's desperate for money, because you start to profile these people. You start to go, okay, she's a single mother or something like that. So she probably did do some work that week. So that's an easy one. But then you start to get other things, and that's like, but Orwell, the system can't figure that out itself, because it's a computer system. It's not human. So
it requires nasty little bureaucrats.
It does. It requires horrible people like myself to actually make the decisions for it. But there are parts in the game where you have to basically make a decision about whether, like, was this person involved with this bombing or not. Okay, like this thing says that they were here at the time. This thing says they were in Freedom Plaza at the time.
Okay.
Which of them is true? Okay, and you've got to make that decision. So there are maybe different endings to the chapters depending on what you do. But you start to get deeper and deeper and deeper into this conspiracy, basically, to the point where it just becomes like you don't know who you are anymore. It's just like, I've just turned into this horrible human being.
I was going to say, because I remember 2 weeks ago when you were talking about The Last Guardian, you had this passion in voice, the twinkle in your eye. You were talking about Trico, all the love and bond. You're now reviewing this game, and the same passion's in your voice. And in your eyes.
Well, yeah, but I mean, the game's kept me hooked.
You're discovering your true self.
I like a mystery. I do like a mystery, all right? And that's what this game is. This is basically just a mystery game. It's no different from any other sort of mystery game. You're looking for clues, but it's just the fact that your motivations are not entirely pure. So, but it's like, but because Symes is basically like, he's like very much a government guy sort of thing. So he's just basically like, anytime something comes up that when you upload something to Orwell, he can see it and he'll like comment on it as you're doing it, sort of thing. So he's like, he's been saying something like, oh, of course they'd think that. Like, you know, just being really cynical and stuff like that. And you're just like, yes, Symes, of course he would think that. Like, you're like, I totally agree with you, man. And you go, oh God, what am I doing?
If you were to compare the level of immersion and the feeling of evil in I'm going to say in a believable way, with Tyranny, is...
Tyranny's more of a straight up just being evil, though. Yeah, with certain complications, it's a bit sort of deeper. Whereas this is more of a, you almost feel like it, because it's depersonalized.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like snooping on people in real life. It's a depersonalized thing. You're not actually following them around or anything. You're looking at their online profiles and stuff, and then building up a picture of who they are.
Any criminal essentially detaches themselves from what they do, apart from those that really enjoy themselves. But what I mean is, Tyranny was very, very fantasy-like. The evil factor there was almost unbelievable in a way that was just, I don't know, naive in a way, or very
wasn't the
formulaic.
I think you just want to moan about Tyranny again.
Yeah.
Possibly.
I always think you were like, you talked about Tyranny, and I was just like, is there not an idea with that game though? Is that it's presenting you with an interesting sort of question about morality and about the nature of what is good and evil. If everything is evil, then what is good? What is if that is what if it puts you into that reality?
I think that's kind of what Tyranny tried to do, but it's because I don't think it's because I've played a bit of it now, and I don't think it is really succeeding at what it's setting out to do, because it isn't really doing like, is this in an evil world, is this slightly less evil choice a good thing to do?
Because you're presented with good choices, as in good characters around you, but you just slaughtered them anyway. But my point is, the sort of evil you're just presenting is very believable and happening all around us.
Aye, but that's what I mean.
And
it's like
you're putting you're putting yourself in these shoes, and you feel what essentially our governments are doing to us.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but I mean, like I say, this is a game, and games are escapism, because it's like when I play a game about, like, New Angeles, a game about just, like, driving a city into the ground while everybody goes on strike and power outages and everything's going on. It's just like, that's something you would never do in real life, like, and be able to sleep at night.
Well, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, like, specifically about board games. But,
yeah.
There's a lot of like themes that just they would do nothing for you in real life, but
but that's it. It's games are escapism. It's about being something you'd never do in real life, isn't it?
Just a quick one about the sort of workings of Orwell, because I saw you play a wee bit of it, but is it because you mentioned like there's all this information about all the different people? Is it quite focused, or like is there just like this reams of information about anyone that you can say? It's
very focused. You can't just go looking around anything, right? Yeah. It's pretty linear, to be honest. It's very obvious where you go and look next. And when some like certain things will trigger things like phone calls that you can go and listen into, or emails that you can read and stuff like that. But I don't think that really detracts from the game, because it does make the game sort of more sort of streamlined and stuff like that. It is quite railroady, I suppose, but it's all about the story and the point that they're making and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I've really enjoyed it. Like I say, I've still got the last chapter to play. Chapter 4 was left on a bit of a cliffhanger, so I'm actually really looking forward to streaming the last chapter.
You're about to get broken out and brought into the Resistance.
I think so. I think we're going to have a knock on the door once this episode goes out.
This is all
are going to turn up. Yep, so that's Orwell. The full release of that was October the 20th, 2016. Like I say, I don't know if they released it in chapters. I mean, I think I might have just assumed that. But it is a 5-chapter thing. And that's by Osmotic. There you go. This is a pretty good game. And the art style's pretty cool as well, I have to say. I don't know how I would describe it, because I'm bad at that kind of thing, but it is pretty nice sort of art style, especially the pictures of people and stuff. It's pretty good what they've done with it. Okay, so that's episode 39, a video games episode. We've crammed a lot into that.
Really battered through that one.
Yes.
You kept us going.
I did. I've been cracking the whip today. Let's give out our internets then. So if you want to email us, please do. Ask us some questions. We can answer them on the episodes. It's firstplayertoken@gmail.com. That's FIRST. You'll find us on Facebook, Twitter, SoundCloud, iTunes, and YouTube. They're all FIRST First Player Token, or the large and unnecessary First Player Token, the exception being Twitter, which is @1ST Player Token.
It's once Player Token.
Thank you, Euan,
for remembering that.
My Twitch username, if you want to see me streaming this last chapter of Orwell, is Unnecessary Chris. We have a Discord. Best to ask us for that link, like I always say. Our website is firstplayertoken.com, and we are part of the Podnose Network,
the UK's leading entertainment podcast network. This feels very weird when I segue into that. I don't know what it's like. To be honest, I've not actually listened to it on any of the podcasts. I don't know what that... I might have to go back.
It sounds very natural, you.
Okay, that's fine. It's because we sound the same, roughly. Yeah. Yeah. Plenty of new podcasts. A whole bunch of new podcasts up there. So check them out. Check out our episodes. I'm now uploading the stuff, and I'm hopefully doing it right. I am now. I know I'm doing it right now. I wasn't doing it right the first week, but we'll forget that ever happened, and we'll carry on with a new vigour.
Okay, so that's been episode 39. We will be back next week with episode 40, which will be a tabletop episode. So some board games, possibly an RPG, but we'll see, Pawel.
Look at
We'll
that.
see. So, thanks for listening, and we'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye.